So in the main event for UFC 304, Leon Edwards lost his welterweight title to Belal Muhammad in a very convincing fashion. The summary for this fight was very simple. Belal fought very well, Leon didn't, and every single UK fan that stayed up till 5 AM fell asleep before and during the fight. Now Leon Edwards has looked very good in his last two fights against two of the top guys in the welterweight division that is actually similar to Belal on paper. But instead, Belal was able to easily dog walk Leon to a decision. But how? Well, it's because Leon and Belal are polar opposites, and Belal drew Leon completely into his fight. Belal Muhammad came into this fight with an excellent game plan. It was obvious that he needed to close distance and smother Leon's clean striking in order to win the fight. Now Usman and Colby did not have great tactics to close distance against Leon, but Belal certainly did through many different tactics. But one of them was certainly the jab. Belal threw a variety of jabs in this fight. Stiff jabs, up jabs, double jabs, pawing jabs, and even jabbed while getting around Leon's lead foot to get off the center line. Very smart to avoid shots down the middle by Leon. And Leon had no answers for it. He couldn't stop Belal's forward pressure because he couldn't take away the jab. In the beginning of the round, especially in round 1, he actually did try to take away the jab because he was able to see it. And when he did see it, he was using the clinch and the pull counters. So the idea was there, but he just wasn't accurate. He couldn't set any traps against Belal's jab, nor was there any timing or variety on his part to do so. Usually in a closed stance battle, in order to land the jab, you have to step on the inside of your opponent's foot to land, which perfectly sets up Leon to walk Belal into a left hand, taking a page out of Marquez versus Pacquiao. And at that point, he has options to follow up or exit to the right, but not once did that ever happen to begin with. Leon was not initiating exchanges in this fight. If someone were keeping stats in this fight, the ratio of whoever was being first in this fight is like 95-5 Belal Muhammad. And Leon does this a lot. He fights at his own pace and tries to set traps or counterpunch by being second, but he was not great at that in this fight. We already know that he couldn't take away Belal's jab, but he was also waiting a lot. He was thinking defense first. That's why you kept seeing the high elbow guard or the long guard in the pocket up against the fence. The reason why Leon couldn't counterpunch so easily in this fight compared to the Colby fight was the fact that Belal was very active in this fight. He doubled Leon Edwards in total and significant strikes numerically, but from an eye test perspective, Belal was throwing a lot of arm punches. Arm punches are punches where you don't sit down on them, but rather throw them to keep your opponent occupied to set something else up. In this way, you also don't gas yourself out and expend a ton of energy as if you were loading up on punches. So because of this, Leon was occupied by the activity from Belal Muhammad. He doesn't have the mental capacity to set traps if there are multiple punches thrown at him. And in return, Belal was able to set up a ton of great takedown entries. Here's a clip of him throwing a 1-1-2-7 into a double leg entry, and here's a classic step low overhand right into a takedown entry that was perfectly executed. This frustrated Leon a lot because you can see he was hand fighting, but he was hand fighting in a way where he was just trying to push Belal back because he couldn't stop Belal's forward pressure tactically. Leon's lateral movement has generally been pretty good, and again, specifically in his last two fights, that's how he got it done. But in this fight, his side to side movement was shut down quickly for two of the reasons that I mentioned earlier: not being able to stop Belal's forward pressure and not initiating enough on exchanges. To make the most out of your lateral movement, you gotta either throw to keep your opponent honest, or you can use your opponent's offense as an opening as a way for you to exit and reset to the center of the octagon. If you're just going to allow your opponent to walk you down and just bank on being second to counterpunch, and you can't do that, and you try to move laterally, of course you're going to be in trouble. In this fight, Leon moved one way the entire fight up against the cage, and it was to the right, and Belal completely shut it down by cutting off the ring with his punches. He punched where Leon was going to be. His lead handwork was phenomenal in this fight. He caught Leon with so many jabs on the exit, and the left hooks were landing as Leon was moving into them. Not to mention the shot selection from Belal was also huge. Most guys in MMA don't know how to effectively score against the high elbow guard because it's such a different and unique defensive look. But Belal was essentially quote unquote taking what the defense gave him. A high elbow guard or a long guard protects you from all straight and hook punches. So Belal instead opted to throw uppercuts and body shots that were easily landing, and some of them shook Leon. You can't defend everything in combat sports, and capitalizing on an open area is the true definition of shot selection, and Belal Muhammad did that. Something else Belal did very well was just the multiple tactics that was employed to effectively close down the distance. The first thing that stands out to me is the footwork. Belal has quicker feet than guys like Colby and Usman, who are more flat-footed fighters. Belal was slowly inching into range with his feet with the help of his jab, but also something that you might not have noticed was his hand fighting. Check out some of these clips where Belal was trying to draw Leon into a hand fight since Leon was so defensively defensively minded, and if you pay attention to Belal's feet, he was able to sneak in a couple of inches and be in range to land his punches. That is an elite way, a championship way matter of fact, to disguise your footwork coming forward that most people wouldn't be able to recognize. On top of that, Belal had moments where he switched stances coming forward, also known as shifting, and he was able to cover a lot of distance. Like here's a clip of Belal inching his way forward and then switching stances when he has Leon up against the fence to shoot a takedown entry. All four of these tactics work very well with each other. Inching footwork, shifting, hand fighting, and jab variety. All great tactics against a long southpaw fighter. But to loop things back for just a moment, earlier we mentioned how Leon couldn't stop Belal's jab, even though he was known as the better striker coming into this fight. But ironically, Belal was the one that was not only winning the striking exchanges, but he was the one that was actually taking away Leon's jab. If you notice, he did it in two ways. Everything begins with an inside slip of the jab, which is risky, but it worked for him. And he would either return with a 1-2 or a check hook over the top. And not only that, because Leon was the one that only threw single strikes the entire fight, he was the one that was running into traps from Belal. Yes, Leon was walking into traps. Probably contributes to the reason why Leon didn't want to initiate a lot of exchanges, but this alone is not a good excuse. So as far as the technical battle, Leon already lost a big time, but the area that he needed to win in order to have a chance to win during the fight was the mental battle, and he lost it from the very beginning. When you guys watch a UFC fight, at the start of every round when the bell rings, do you guys notice anything? Because something that I personally do is that I pay attention at the beginning of every round to see who occupies the center to start the round. It's a race to the monster logo in the center, and Leon Edwards not once did he ever get to the logo before Belal Muhammad. That is a mental loss. There is no reason why Leon shouldn't take center of the octagon, because it's where he can try to flip the switch and change the course of the fight, where he's pot-shotting in space in order to pick his opponent apart. If Belal takes center, he'll continue to walk you into his fight because you have nothing for his offense tactically. But this is where Leon's lack of being a mean and ruthless fighter comes into play. Little things like this not only don't allow you to be in a position to gain any kind of momentum, but your back is against the wall, literally. And you can only play this game where you stick and move and get on your bike for so long. In combat, something that I've always said from the very beginning is that in order to stop a bull from charging forward, you can't play Matador the entire fight. At some point, you gotta sit down and push the bull back, and not once did Leon ever try to do that. He doesn't have a lot of knockouts on his record for a reason. He's not a finisher for a reason. He's the play the game efficient and take minimal risk kind of fighter, essentially being the point fighter that outpoints his opponents. That alone ain't gonna work against a guy like Belal. Another thing that pissed me off was Leon's lack of urgency to try to steal rounds. I can't understand moments where Leon was able to reverse positions, why he didn't create any separation to bring the fight back to the feet so he can inflict damage. Like in round 2, he was able to work his way back up to the feet. Belal clearly won round 2 on the feet and on the ground, and this man tries to wrestle him instead of separating and letting his offense go to potentially inflict damage to steal the round. It happened in round 4 as well. Leon has his back taken, he escapes the body triangle and ends up in Belal's guard. There's 30 seconds left on the clock, and guess how many elbows and ground and pound strikes Leon threw? The same amount of hair that DC has. Or actually nah, he tried to throw an elbow, but Belal used that moment to escape the position. But still, my point stands. Ultimately, everything that Leon does, Belal does the opposite. Leon fights in space, Belal fights on the front foot. Leon throws single strikes, Belal throws volume. Leon fights a slow pace, Belal fights a fast pace. And he just had an answer for everything that Leon likes to do. Not to mention his skills were much better than we all thought. This is where the title of the video comes into play. This isn't to discredit Belal's performance in any way, because I'm clearly not. I'm making it a point of emphasis that Leon fights a majority of his opponents the same way. He approaches every fight the same way. As a champion, adaptability is what's needed in order to stay as a champion, and Leon was too stubborn to do that. His bad habits of not having a great gas tank, not throwing enough strikes, not being more aggressive in his fights has caught up to him now. Like bro, this man threw a combination once the entire fight. I'm not even lying, he threw a combination only once the entire fight. Every other exchange was just a single strike. It was a 3-punch combo in the 4th round, and it was the sloppiest combo you have ever seen from a UFC champion that's a striker. Like I'm not even kidding, I legit thought that I was watching Dricus du Plessis fighting for a minute. Meanwhile, Belal Muhammad was locked in mentally. He made the decision to take one 1 and give 2. That is the perfect mindset for the game plan that Belal employed. That's the difference between him and Usman and Colby. It's the fact that he wasn't afraid to get hit, whereas Usman, coming off the head kick KO, was hesitant and Colby was completely gun shy. Leon doesn't have the power to hurt Belal, so he can't afford to fight at a slow pace like that, especially if he's not accurate. Every time Leon threw a strike, Belal returned it immediately with a couple of his own, and that sent a mental message to Leon saying that he can't back him down. He's gonna stay in his face all night long, and he's gonna have to do something about it. Overall, it was just a great performance by Belal Muhammad. So many great things to see, honestly. A massive underdog, and he was able to pull it off by winning the tactical and the mental battle.